In the small, rural town of Pine Hollow, a dense, ancient forest loomed on the outskirts. The locals spoke of strange occurrences and eerie sounds emanating from the woods, but these stories were mostly dismissed as folklore. However, those who dared to venture too deep often returned with unsettling tales, or didn't return at all. Jenny and Mark, a young couple new to the town, were skeptical of the warnings. They loved hiking and exploring new places, so the dark forest intrigued them. One crisp autumn afternoon, they decided to take a hike into the heart of the woods, despite the cautionary tales. As they walked deeper into the forest, the canopy thickened, and sunlight barely penetrated the dense foliage. The atmosphere grew cooler and more foreboding. Strange carvings on trees caught their eyes, symbols that neither of them recognized. Mark joked about ancient rituals, trying to lighten the mood, but Jenny felt a growing sense of unease. They came across an old, overgrown path that seemed to lead to a clearing. Following it, they found the remnants of what appeared to be an abandoned village. The structures were crumbling, and nature had reclaimed most of them. A sense of dread hung in the air, and the silence was deafening. Jenny and Mark explored the ruins, their curiosity getting the better of them. In one of the dilapidated huts, Jenny found a dusty, leather-bound journal. The pages were brittle, and the handwriting was barely legible, but it told a chilling story. The villagers had been plagued by a malevolent entity known as the Watcher, a spirit that stalked and tormented anyone who entered its domain. The journal described how the villagers had performed dark rituals to appease the Watcher, but their efforts only seemed to anger it further. As they read the journal, a cold breeze swept through the hut, and the door slammed shut. Panic set in, and they quickly left the village, the feeling of being watched growing stronger with every step. The forest seemed darker now, and the path they had followed had vanished, replaced by a labyrinth of trees. Night fell, and they were hopelessly lost. Their flashlights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. Strange noises surrounded them, whispers, rustling leaves, and distant footsteps. They huddled together, trying to stay calm, but the fear was palpable. Suddenly, Mark saw movement in the shadows. A tall, gaunt figure with glowing eyes stood just beyond the reach of their light. It watched them silently, its presence radiating malice. Mark shouted at it to leave them alone, but the figure only moved closer, its eyes never leaving them. Jenny remembered the journal and the mention of symbols to ward off the Watcher. Desperate, she fumbled in her bag for a piece of chalk and began drawing the symbols on the ground around them. The figure stopped, its eyes narrowing in anger, but it didn't approach any further. They spent the night huddled within the circle of symbols, the figure standing guard just outside, never blinking, never moving. As dawn broke, the figure finally disappeared, melting into the shadows of the forest. The path back to town was miraculously clear, as if the forest itself had guided them out. Exhausted and terrified, they stumbled back to Pine Hollow, vowing never to return to the cursed woods. They shared their story with the townsfolk, who listened with grim faces and knowing nods. Jenny and Mark never spoke of the forest again, but the memory of the Watcher haunted them for the rest of their lives. The ancient journal was left in the town's small library, a warning to any who might think of venturing into the woods. The Watcher remained, lurking in the shadows, waiting for its next victims. And the townspeople of Pine Hollow continued to live in the shadow of the dark, silent forest, ever watchful, ever wary.